Roland has just released the RD08, and we're here today to answer one question. Is this the best budget stage piano that's ever been created? And when I look at the offering from all of the other major manufacturers, with the exception of maybe the Casio 3100 that this certainly has some resemblance to, I can't think of another product that comes nearly as close to this type of functionality and tone quality as the RD08 for this price point. So if you are a professional or semi-professional musician, here's my 4 reasons why you're going to want to take a look at the RD08. First up, this contains the full ZEN-Core synthesis sound engine. This is exactly the same chipset that the RD08 has, but it's also the same chipset that you find in the Fantom 8 and 08 series, with the notable restriction being that this is really just kept to 3 zones versus, say, 16 on something like the Fantom products. But on a patch-per-patch basis, the offering is identical. This has over 3,000 internal tones preloaded when you get it. And in addition to that, there's also the Supernatural Piano and E.Piano engines that are also still present. Now, what's the big deal about ZEN-Core? Well, it is a synthesis engine, as we've already mentioned, but in short, it takes 4 partials and applies a full synthesis chain to it. You can apply oscillators, you can apply different wave sources, envelope control, and a myriad of other effects to this to really create a highly dynamic set of tones. And while you're not necessarily able to get in and do the same level of editing on the 08 as you would on, say, some of the Fantom products, the fundamental architecture remains the same, which means if you can hunt down a few hundred sounds that you really love out of the 3,000 that are on here, you're going to be left with super lush, highly textured tones to play with. And on top of the ZEN-Core, you've also got a full effects suite loaded on the RD08, complete with multi-effects on the zone, insert effects on the scene, and master effects. And while you're in the middle of doing all that editing, this comes with 100 preset slots that you can save all of those presets to. So in terms of delivering a professional sound with lots of flexibility and tons of thickness and texture, the RD08 really delivers quite the punch for the price. Number 2, these speakers are insane. For something that supposedly only has 12 rated watts of power coming out of these 4 speakers, the amount of sound that this generates is just crazy. So on this machine, we've got 2 tweeters that are facing up, rather obviously positioned right below these grills. Then there are also 2 main speakers that are facing down, hitting the floor and giving you a little more body and depth to the sound. They've got these 2 speakers really well tuned and balanced to one another, so you don't feel like you're getting an unreasonable amount of highs or lows or nothing's muffled. It's super clear, and as we said, for something that on paper only says 12 watts, we're in a room that's about 250 to 300 square feet right now. And when we fired this up, Lee, our camera person, and myself were completely blown away by just how much tone this thing was producing. You're just gonna love being in front of this thing. Third thing, one of the reasons that Roland was able to achieve a lower price point on this instrument is that they have made the USB audio interface an option, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a first in the industry. If you don't want the USB audio, it comes by default not enabled, but you can head over to the Roland Cloud, buy a lifetime subscription to that service, and download a software pack which will enable the USB audio. So if you want it, you can buy it. If you don't, you're not charged for it up front. Then finally, number 4 on my list, the RD08, in terms of onboard functionality, is virtually the same as the RD88. It may not have the same DAW integration possibilities because of the stripped down physical interface, but the internal OS and overall functionality of the RD08 is basically identical to the RD88. You're missing some faders, you're definitely missing tone category access buttons, and you are missing 300 preset slots that the RD88 has that the RD08 doesn't have. But in terms of the number of tones, accessing all of your various editable menus, the effects, your 3-layer controls, your song playback functionality, your line and mic inputs, and of course your 2 wheel toggles over on the left side, I think you're going to find a lot of people squinting to see the difference in spec and overall capability between this instrument and the 88. So when you go to play the RD08 or the RD88 for that matter, something that you should know is by default, those tone categories are really selecting presets or scenes rather than individual tones. So when you're looking at the screen and you can see the 001 is highlighted, that's referring to the scene number 1. And as we go through these various categories, you'll see that that actually only goes up to 100, which is the maximum number of user scenes that you can save. But within those, you of course have the 3 zones that you can play with. And to actually go through and sort through the 3,000 that are available, you simply tab down to one of the 3 zones. In this case, we just have 1 zone enabled. And when that's highlighted and you press enter, now you get into the full menu where you can select from the 3,000 different zones. Tab right and you can start accessing all the various banks. Press enter and you can view by tone category rather than by bank. So 2 really easy ways to get through that enormous list of 3,000 tones. So now let's have a listen to that acoustic piano tone. They've got a bright concert on here as a scene. And then you right away start getting into some of these multi-layered scenes, such as the concert grand in EP. And you've got easy tone control and volume control between the 2. And you can bring up that tons of E.Piano blends that are really, really tasty. Should mention that the wheel too is often pre-programmed to be attached to control some type of a scene effect, or in some cases a multi-effect. And then of course we mentioned this lush, thick tone that you often get from the ZEN-Core synthesis engine, and when you hop over to the synth category you can really start to sample that quite well. Like a lot of other Roland products in this price range and category, it's equipped with a PHA-4 standard action. I've said enough about that action on many other videos, but if you're catching it for the first time, I happen to think that it's a great feel, particularly for people who already have some experience with acoustic pianos. I really find that the dynamic speed and weighting of this key is super authentic. One last thing that I want to mention, Roland, just as a decision, generally does not include Bluetooth radio functionality on any of its professionally destined products. So the RD08, RD88, none of the Fantom stuff, even the top level Fantom stuff, they don't have the Bluetooth radios in there either for audio or Bluetooth. The idea being that if you are going to be dependent on any kind of connection to a computer or a tablet or anything in a professional setting, you do not want to risk the instability of a Bluetooth connection when the stakes are high. I'd also say that for people considering the RD08, they strongly give the RPU3 triple pedal a consideration because it's going to give you tons of additional controls for all of those various effects settings that you can apply here on the RD08. And so to wrap things up here, I think Roland absolutely has delivered a smashing value with the new RD08. Please consider subscribing and liking the video. It really helps us out here. And of course, we'd love to have you back as a regular viewer. My name is Stu Harrison. This has been Merriam Pianos on YouTube, and we'll see you again soon.